So David Brynn is here tonight. He's the founder, executive director, and conservation forester at Vermont Family Forests Foundation. And we invited David here in part as part of a new undertaking that we're looking at forest conservation and carbon sequestration. We had a talk last month by Ethan Tapper, our Chittenden County forester. And we're looking forward to hopefully welcoming another presentation next month. But with that, I guess I will let David take it away. Hopefully you guys are all seeing David's screen at this point. But if anyone has technical difficulties, feel free to type it to me in the chat box. Or you can shoot me an email. I do have my email open as well.
Hey, can I interject just a thought in here? This project that we're developing with interested parties, who we're still identifying those interested parties. Vermont Family Forest is a real core helper at this point, and I just want to say what's driving the desire to have this conversation and continue it is has to do with the fact that Vermont has very few dollars to do forest conservation, period. So we're trying to figure out how to not slow down in our efforts to do forest conservation and really forest carbon, carbon storage and sequestration, that aspect as much as, biodiversity. We're trying to figure out how to go forward at a clip that's going to be in keeping with, New England goals, I should say, the Harvard report. And so we've come to this idea of using management plans versus conservation easements. And this is just the beginning of, I'm going to just say, an initiative where we want to start getting organized to be able to go out and find property owners that are desiring to have this kind of philosophy and management standards, if you will. And so David has just been like the perfect, Vermont Family Forest standards are just that. So it's just like, this is the perfect marriage right here. And we're really excited that Vermont Family Forest is with us in this geographic region to be able to do this kind of work. And so we're feeling really hopeful, and we're really hoping for lots of feedback at this point. It's very early on. Thanks, Kate.
Okay, David, I think you are free to take it away here.
Excellent, Kate. Thank you very much.
Yep, if everyone can just make sure your mute is on so that we're not hearing a lot of feedback during David's presentation, that would be great. Thank you.
And well, thanks to Lewis Creek Association and to folks who've shown up. I'm really excited to be here tonight with you, if I have a voice, and to I don't know, explore some things in this era in which we find ourselves. I was on the Lewis Creek board a gazillion years ago, and I remember one of the first cooperative projects we worked on was the AMPs. And I remember Larry Hamilton being there and being very supportive, and it was a really good, and I'm really excited to be working with you again. Okay, so let's go here. Vermont Family Forests is a 501c3 nonprofit. We've existed for, a little over 25 years. And our goal is our mission is to understand, preserve forest ecosystem health, to practice, I may have to have your screen share. Well, it doesn't matter. We'll see how we do. Practice forest ecosystem conservation that is holistic and adaptive, to support careful management of local family forests for ecological, economic, and social benefits, and to foster a forest culture focused on community well-being, ecological resilience, and the quest for an optimal land ethic. We're inspired by many. Aldo Leopold primarily. Health is the capacity of the land for self-renewal. Conservation is our effort to understand and preserve that capacity. What is needed is an intense consciousness of land. Recently, we're inspired by Stan Rowe, who came up with the expression Earth Alive and published a book with that title. Humanity's 10,000-year-old experiment in mode of living at the expense of nature is failing. A new worldview anchored in the planetary ecosphere points the way. In the words of Justin Brand, without ecology, there is no economy. In the words of John Dewey, without application, principles and ideals have no bearing or test. In the words of Jean-Marie Guyot, it is a question of being and of living, of feeling oneself be, of feeling oneself live, to act as we are and as we live, to be not a sort of lie in action, but a truth in action. Our goals are to cultivate an ecological ethnicity in the watersheds of home and to promote forest ecosystem conservation based on the keystone virtues of compassion, prudence, and gratitude, and to promote forest ecosystem health as expressed in flood and drought resilience, clean water, wildlife species richness, and sequestration and storage of atmospheric carbon. So here's what we're going to try to do here in this relatively short period of time. I'm going to do an introduction. I'm going to draw a little bit from Migration from Vermont, written by Lewis Stilwell in 1950. The Land Ethic, Leopold, 49. A Manifesto for Earth by Stan Rowe, published in Biodiversity, literally 2 days before he died in 2004. And Applying an Earth-Centered Worldview, which is where I'll get down to the brass tacks. Perhaps the most serious obstacle impeding the evolution of a land ethic is the fact that our educational system and certainly our economic system are headed away from rather than toward an intense consciousness of land. The key log which must be moved to release the evolutionary process for an ethic is simply this. Quit thinking about decent land use as solely an economic problem. Examine each question in terms of what is ethically and aesthetically right, as well as what is economically expedient. A thing is right when it tends to preserve the integrity, stability, and beauty of the biotic community. It is wrong when it tends otherwise. By 1950, the Anthropocene had officially arrived. It is the period during which human activity has become the dominant influence on climate and the environment. That dominance is now overwhelming the Earth's capacity for self-renewal. We humans have created a climate crisis, and the time has come to use the transformative and sometimes regenerative power of crisis to help heal the one and only Earth we Earthlings will ever know. In his book, Migration from Vermont, 1950, Lewis Stilwell tells us a number of things. He mentions the 10,000 years of Abenaki occupation that were documented, the state we call Vermont, also known to Abenaki peoples as, let's see if I can do this, Endokina, meaning my homeland. Vikings reach America, 790. Voila, Verdemont, Champlain, 1609. Verd is not green, it's verdant. It was a very spongy catchmenty place. 1762, New Hampshire land grants. 1783 to 1808, 25 good years. 1808 to 1820, discouragement and departures, ditched watersheds. 1820 to 1830, waterways, wool, and other ways out. 1830, 1840, the Great Migration. 1840, 1860, a sequel with a climax. Why was Vermont's settlement movement up and out? Stilwell said, the universal fact of exploitation. No permanent economic footing. Soils deteriorated quickly as humans was used up. Tough climate, challenging topography, and Vermont gave itself up to pasturage, which never supported a large population. In 1905 to present, Gifford Pinchot's Practical Forestry, Forest Resource Management. There are 4 things that must be done so forests can give the best service, Pinchot said. Protection from fire, insects, and thieves, strong and abundant reproduction, plenty of growing space for crop trees, trees ripe and ready for the axe. The Land Ethic by Aldo Leopold in 1949. Conservationists are notorious for their dissensions. Superficially, they seem to add up to mere confusion, but a more careful scrutiny reveals a single plane of cleavage, common to many specialized fields. In each field, one group, A, regards the land as soil and its function as commodity production. The other group, B, regards land as biota and its function is something broader, very much broader. In my own field, he went on to say, forestry, Group A is quite content to grow trees like cabbages with cellulose as the basic forest commodity. Group B, on the other hand, sees forestry as fundamentally different from agronomy because it employs natural species and manages a natural environment rather than creating an artificial one. Group B prefers natural reproduction on principle. It worries about a whole series of secondary forest functions, wildlife, recreation, watersheds, and wilderness areas. Now, mycorrhizae, carbon sequestration, and more. To my mind, Group B feels the stirring of an ecological conscience. His outlook was this: it is inconceivable to me that an ethical relation to land can exist without love, respect, and admiration for land and a high regard for its value. By value, I of course mean something far broader than mere economic value. I mean value in a philosophical sense. Manifesto for the Earth, 2004, a powerful document. This is something that builds on Leopold's work. Humanity's 10,000-year-old experiment in the mode of living at the expense of nature, culminating in economic globalization, is failing. We have wrongly considered Earth, its ecosystems, and their myriad organic, inorganic parts as mere provisioners, valued on when they serve our needs and wants. He says a courageous change in attitudes and activities is urgent. A new worldview anchored in the planetary ecosphere points the way. Statement of conviction: a trusting attachment to the ecosphere, an aesthetic empathy with surrounding nature, a feeling of awe for the miracle of the living earth and its mysterious harmonies is humanity's unrecognized heritage. Affectionately realized again, our connections with nature, the natural world, will begin to fill the gap in lives lived in the industrialized world. Important ecological purposes that civilization and urbanization have obscured will reemerge. The goal is restoration of Earth's diversity, complexity, with our prodigal species once again a cooperative, responsible, and ethical member. Here are the core principles. The ecosphere is the center of value for humanity. The creativity and productivity of Earth's ecosystems depend upon their integrity. The Earth-centered worldview is supported by natural history. Earth-centered ethics are grounded in awareness of our place in nature. An Earth-centered worldview values diversity of ecosystems and cultures. Earth-centered ethics support social justice. Action principles: defend and preserve Earth's creative potential. Reduce human population size. Reduce human per capita consumption of Earth parts. Promote Earth-centered governance and spread the message. So now we'll move to applying an Earth-centered worldview. We basically have three relationships with forests. One is forest resource management, which is wise use of forests, sustained yields over time. Control is the key word. Motivation is primarily economic. Forest ecosystem conservation, mimicking natural forest disturbance and processes, is a key phrase. Motivations are ecological, ethical, and economic. Wild forest preservation, self-renewal is the key phrase. Motivations are primarily ecological and ethical. Vermont Family Forest is very interested in Vermont's center-west ecoregion. We're centered in Bristol, which happens to be just the belly button of the center-west ecoregion. And it goes to the Winooski River and to the north, and to the west, the east side of the Mad River watershed to the east, to the south side of the Middlebury River to the south, and to Lake Champlain. We have this view of the Center West ecoregion as a self-renewing, working, organic, regenerative, culturally, socially, and spiritually restorative homeland. We see things, all of these factors rising if we succeed in accomplishing what we want to accomplish. Love, compassion, soul restoration, honoring the first peoples, truth, gratitude, eating the forest, organic family forestry, clean, clear, highly oxygenated water, atmospheric carbon sequestration and storage, wildlife species richness, re-enchantment, stable, humus-rich, productive soils, slowing, spreading, and sinking peak storm flows, food and drought resilience and recovery, invasive plant species resistance, cultural diversity going up, cultural restoration, forwarding, not skidding, high quality, diverse, high value timber products, high quality, energy efficient, local and primary and secondary value adding, high quality, well-educated, well-paid, properly equipped and insured workforce, outstanding natural beauty, high quality forest-based recreation opportunities, peaceful and quiet places, dark skies at night, social justice, and less stuff. Every acre cannot be everything to everyone. Well, what should we do then? Well, one thing we should start with is triad mapping. In terms of forestry, we talked about industrial forestry, family forestry, ecological reserves. We need perhaps maybe 30% in industrial forestry, even-aged management, economic maturity, AMPs, stewardship, wise use. 40% family forestry maybe, light on the land forestry, uneven-age management by area regulation, OCPs, optimal conservation practices, mutual aid, friendship. 30% ecological reserves, pro-forestation, WPPs, wildland preservation practices, intact forest, forever wild, worship. We need to match governance with assets. Public assets really are soil and plants when it comes to forests. Private assets are soil and plants when it comes to forests. But common assets, water, wildlife, and air, they are all assets that we, the people, we, the commoners, we, the people who live here, need to stand up for, just like Lewis Creek is doing in all of its good work and others. Common assets. There are three assets. There's not just public and private. The common assets are very, very important. Focusing on conserving our commonly held assets, high quality water commons, species rich wildlife commons, sequestered and stored atmospheric carbon commons, flood and drought resilience commons. That is a key element, I believe, as we move forward in this new age. I want to celebrate Vermont Conservation Design, which is produced by Vermont ANR. It's a remarkable stroke of work. Water commons, we've mapped the areas that are super highly important, and seeing them on the map and seeing their juxtaposition for the water commons is key. And I remind us, we the people hold the water, and the state is our trustee. Vermont Conservation Design, again, wildlife commons. In the pink areas are rare, and in the blue areas is major rivers, ponds, and lakes. These are key places for wildlife and connectivity places. We, the people, hold the wildlife, and the state is our trustee. Vermont Conservation Design helps us with air commons, a focus on carbon sequestration and purple and storage. The purple is the rock star as far as forests of socking away carbon. We, the people, hold the air, and the state is our trustee. Employing Vermont Conservation Design and the work from TNC, the blueprint, these are key things, as Marty said, and I think we're going to be doing more of it. Vermont Conservation Design summarized, the green and the blue are our highest priority common assets, we the people. If we're interested in our water commons, our wildlife commons, our air commons, we should be very interested in the green and the blue and the white, but especially the green and the blue. We're looking at the Center West ecoregion as home, taking care of it and hoping that others do the same elsewhere, and having commoning practices and commoners. So the focus on optimal conservation practice in family forests, forest ecosystem conservation areas to improve water quality, wildlife species richness, and atmospheric carbon sequestration, slow spread and sink peak storm flows, and attenuate flood and drought damage while enhancing forest-based recreation and forest productivity in forested headwaters. We can do this. We have identified a bunch of practices, but 12 key forest access practices that'll really help move us forward, I believe, in terms of carbon, in terms of water, and in terms of wildlife species richness. Retain as much healthy forest cover as possible. It's not just about keeping forests, folks. It's about keeping forests healthy. That is so important now, much more important than it was 50 years ago. Monitor forest health, including soil erosion and compaction, water quality and carbon sequestration and storage. Focus on our water commons as a key indicator of forest health, just as a blood test gives clues to human health. Limit access, trail, and path extent to a total of 5% of the area served. This can be done. We've been doing it. Aim for 7% average grade of access roads, paths, and trails. We call them lines of grace. Build access roads, trails, and paths under dry summer conditions. Use broad-based dips to drain access paths and trails to the optimal extent. Avoid ditches and culverts when possible. Outslope. Install erosion control at very frequent intervals, far more frequent than we've done in the past. More outsloping of access trails, avoid ditches. These things help to reduce storm flow because they get more of the forest, which is designed for storm flow in the act. Avoid building access in areas that are over 35% slope or adjacent to streams and other water bodies. Log under frozen winter conditions. Use forwarders rather than skidders to move timber from forest to log landing. Keep forwarders on forwarding paths. Directionally fell low-value timber across slopes and leave in place to slow, spread, and sink storm flows. Work to convert ditched watersheds to spongy catchments. Clean water is the premier forest product. And then there are 16 key forest vegetation practices. Use single tree and small group selection. Practice uneven age management by area regulation. Avoid clear cutting and whole tree harvesting. Manage for secure cavity, snag, and decadent trees, large ones, and lots of them. Celebrate them. Manage for at least 4 down trees, with one exceeding 21 inches and 4 exceeding 15 per acre. But that's the bare minimum. We should have more of that left in the forest to allow the forest to recover from disturbance. Grow the largest trees and use the longest maturity ages possible. Retain vigorous, wind-firm legacy trees and that are able to handle the windstorm events that we're throwing at them. Use natural regeneration to the maximum extent practical. Protect biological legacies of all types: coarse dead wood, logs, snags, trees that are large, living and old, buried seed, soil organic matter, invertebrates, sprouting plants, mycorrhizal fungi, to aid in post-harvest recovery and to keep the forest from becoming oversimplified. Avoid tree felling on slopes exceeding 50%. Leave as much biomass on site as possible. Promote a vertical stand structure that includes overstory, midstory, shrub, and herbaceous vegetation layers. Use biodegradable, non-petroleum bar and chain oil to protect forest workers and groundwater supplies. Avoid synthetic pesticides. Leave at least 30%, if not 50%, or 75% of the average annual growth in the forest. Directionally fell again, and Work to convert ditched watersheds to spongy catchments. That's what our forests want to be. That's what they were when the Champlain first celebrated. And it's in our power to actually encourage more of that. Next, and lastly, I think it's imagine, adopt, and promote wildland preservation practices. Proforestation. This is a new term for me. I think it's a very exciting one. It means growing intact forests to their ecological potential. That essentially means letting nature do the job uninterrupted by humans. It is the quickest and most reliable solution for drawing carbon out of the atmosphere. This from Dr. Bill Muma, who has a Nobel Prize for his work in this very field. Note, proforestation is also great for water quality, wildlife species richness, and flood and drought resilience too. Imagining wildland preservation practices. Remember, healthy, intact, wild, temperate forests produce the highest quality water, sequester and store the most atmospheric carbon, produce the greatest fish and wildlife species richness, slow, spread, and sink peak storm flows better, and resist invasion by exotic plant species more effectively than any other land cover. For example, things we could do, large reserves are better than small. A single large reserve is better than a group of small ones. Reserves close together are better than reserves far apart. Round reserves are better than long ones. Reserves clustered compactly are better than reserves in a line. And reserves connected by corridors are better than unconnected reserves. This by Reed Noss and Alan Cooperrider. Example, protect riparian forest buffers, widen riparian forest buffers, minimize trails. Trails that we do have should be lines of grace. Stay away from wetlands. Welcome and celebrate beavers. Let it rot, 30% by 2030. Amend UVA to welcome wildlands. Amend UVA to welcome wildlands. Vermont Conservation Design rocks. We need to use it to prioritize our efforts. Closing thoughts. Sri Ramakrishna put it this way: to attain truth or perfect knowledge, cultivate the required consciousness by keeping company with the wise and virtuous in order to know what to value and look for in this world, bringing deep devotion to our quest, cultivating a mystic attitude of universal love and seeing the one in everything, embracing the best scientific inquiry of the phenomenal world and seen world, and seeking truth of the noumenon or unseen world. Or as Johanna Macy put it, cultivate a consciousness that sees Earth as lover, Earth as self. As Aldo Leopold put it, the first rule of intelligent tinkering is to save all of the parts. As E.F. Shoemaker put it in Small is Beautiful, guard the health, beauty, and permanence of land, water, and air, and productivity will look after itself. Closing thoughts. We stand as if upon the deck of some great vessel whose rudder had been torn away by a wave, whose mast had been broken by the wind. It had been lost on the sea as our planet was in space. It went on thus at random, driven by the storm, like a great wreck carrying people. Nevertheless, it arrived at its destination. Perhaps our planet, perhaps humanity, will also arrive at an unknown goal, which it will have created for itself. No hand directs us, no eye looks out for us. The rudder has long since been broken, or rather, there never was one. It has to be made. This is a great task, and it is our task. May the forest be with you, and thank you.
Thank you so much, David. That was great. It looks like we have a few comments, maybe a couple of questions in the chat box. Maybe I'll go ahead and start by reading through those, and then we'll see if we have time for a few other questions if people have them. Can I ask you actually to stop sharing your screen so we can
Oh,
see your
sure.
face a little better too?
Yeah,
That
absolutely.
would be great. We can see everyone. Okay, so Christopher says, mature trees are one of the most important features for the carbon storage of a forest. Current use seems to consider timber value with no allowance for carbon. This impedes our conservation efforts. What is Vermont doing to change this so that we can conserve our big trees and reap an economic benefit?
Not enough. I was kind of amazed by a little study, quick little study that the NRC did last year, just comparing different states' forestry policies as they don't call them current use, but they have similar forestry policies. And Vermont was more aggressive about timber harvesting, tree cutting, and less pro tree, old tree growing than any other state in New England. I thought that was interesting. And so I know for a fact that we can make the scientific case that old forests, old growth forests, wild forests, self-willed forests, forests that have a long rotation, few roads, are really great at sucking away carbon. And they'll be especially important for the next 50 years, as Bill Muma tells us. And also, they're wonderful at producing the highest quality water of any land use. So there's really good reasons for doing it. There's one problem is that our economic system externalizes all those good reasons. It doesn't show up on a list anywhere. It doesn't somehow or other get woven into our economy, our true economy, which they're important. They have certainly economic value, but they're not recognized. So I think one thing we need to do is we need to celebrate the values of all the types of forests. I don't think we want to live in a place where we don't have people cutting trees and making furniture and adding value and doing great things that actually enhance our traditional forest industry, where people can have a good livelihood. I mean, that workforce, those people are an amazing gift. When stuff happens, they know how to get us out of a mess. They're very capable. But on the other hand, Vermont really doesn't, with the exception of federal lands, have much access to wild forests or big trees. I mean, we're encouraged to cut them when they're economically mature, which is about half of their age of what they would be if they were ecologically mature. That is a thing that just requires change, and opening up the most immediate place would be the current use program. And that would be one really important thing. It's a priority that we as a people need to embrace.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So I've got a couple, there were quite a few comments in the chat box as well. I'm happy to read those, but if it's all right with the folks who wrote those comments, I'm going to skip ahead to the next question in the chat for David. And if I skimmed over your point and you'd like me to go back to it, please do raise your hand so I can call on you to answer a question of David. Andrew asks, what are opportunities presented by the Vermont Global Warming Solutions Act and Nascent Vermont Climate Council?
Well, I have to say, I'm not that familiar with the specifics, but I do know that the opportunities of the ecological opportunities of allowing forests to do what they do best, which is to suck away carbon, is really obvious, and it's not rocket science. And that means letting them grow. And I think Bill Muma's points, we don't have to practice proforestation across all of Vermont, but I do think that we can learn from it, that undisturbed forests that are allowed to mature and to become complex and diverse sock away and store a lot of carbon. And that when we remove them or we cut them, there is a regrowth, but the net for a long time is not positive. We need it to be positive. We need to be positive. I don't know if I have to say that again, but and also it's just a different mindset too. If you go back to the work that was done by Stilwell in 1950, I mean, our whole culture is really based on people who came in and just used up the state. We just did. And they weren't bad people. That's how they made a living. Well, now we have a population that is what, 7 billion in the world? And we're planning to have somewhere like 10 billion by 2100. We're in a bit of a pickle. And we have to reassess the things that maybe worked for us in the past that just aren't up to the task today.
Mm-hmm. Yep, absolutely. One other question in the chat from Richard. He says the third rail is the issue of population control that you mentioned earlier. How do we address that?
Well, it's a really tough one, but we have to, in some way, shape, or form, have fewer children, have smaller families, and even more, our per capita consumption. We're not like in a really dense place, but per capita, we use up a pile of stuff. So those two things get kind of linked together. Maybe there's a way of just saying to a particular country where we're trying to figure out, well, either reduce your population or reduce your consumption. I mean, do a net so that you're not knocking us off this trajectory of getting our carbon, our atmospheric carbon, back down below 350. So yeah, so I can't. That's not my thing. It's knowing how best to how to address the population. But I think actually not hiding it, having it being transparent, and having us recognize that the population of the world has just gone crazy since 1850. I mean, I think in 1850 the world had a billion people, if I'm not wrong. I think that's about right. I mean, so now we have 7 times that amount of people. And we got along kind of okay with 1 billion. It's not going to happen overnight, but geez, let's celebrate it. Maybe we should give tax deductions for vasectomies, or something like that. But anyway, it is serious. It's not my realm, but I do know, I think it's good for us to know that unless we deal with that concurrently, all this fooling around in the forest is going to be for naught. So it'd be really great if we could have a really comprehensive, full tilt thing as outlined by Stan Rowe on this. He did. I don't know if any of you have read his book, The Earth Alive. It's really an assemblage of essays. Fantastic. He was a forester in British Columbia, has a PhD in botany and plant bunches of things. Very, very well read, educated man, and really a gentleman. And he had his values in the right place. And I think his book his Earth Manifesto is really building on the legacy that was left by Aldo Leopold. Leopold left the Earth a little too early, and he gave us principles and ideals, but he didn't give us too much guidance. And I think Rowe has tried to push it forward a little bit and how we could focus on certain key elements. And it means about moving away from a homocentric focus to an ecocentric focus, to realize that, the Earth isn't just a nice backdrop. The Earth is what makes it all possible. And we need somehow, way, shape, or form. Now, the other thing I will say to this is that I'm a big believer in concurrence. I don't think we have to change the whole system immediately overnight and get 100% of people walking in like ducks down in a row. I think we need some folks to imagine a different way of being in relation with the natural world and move on it. And that's what I want us to do in Vermont's center west ecoregion. Not going to happen overnight, but if we can commit to some of these basic things, like taking care of our common waters, our common wildlife, and the atmospheric carbon, as well as flood resilience and drought, geez, I think we'll be on a long way toward doing some of the things that we should be doing. We should definitely look at truth. We can't just rely on like what feels good. I love burning wood, but the reality is that burning wood isn't all as green as I thought it was 10 years ago. But so I'm not suggesting that we're not going to burn wood, but let's just be open to the possibility that we could burn less wood, leave more wood in the forest to rot and feed the mycorrhizae. maybe we could use, rather than burning the stuff that we're taking out of the forest, the quote unquote waste, maybe we could insulate with it like the Germans do and create, Leichenbau, light clay, and have it have a life of its own. So again, I think if we commit to living an earth-centered life rather than a homo-centric life, we will start looking at things differently, and we will arrive at different solutions to the complex problems we face.
Great. So we have there's actually like 3 more questions in the chat, and I see Marty has her hand up as well. We're running a little bit short on time here, but we'll try to maybe address folks' questions real quick. Chris asks, please talk about all the clear cutting coming to the Green Mountain National Forest.
I'd be happy to do that, actually.
Okay, great.
I'm going to confess that I love the Green Mountain National Forest. I like the people that work there. I like their capacity. I like the fact that they take things seriously. I think that they're amazing people. When we did the timber harvesting impact study back in 1999, I'm not that old. I was the field forester, and I got to look at 74 logging jobs across Vermont. And it was the best summer of my life. It was so much fun. And I have to say, without a doubt, the Green Mountain National Forest was stellar in terms of how they were laying out their access roads and how they were doing stuff. And so I love the forest, and I love the idea that they have the capacity to be the demonstration forest, because they have a long history. But it's important that we ask them that this is where we want to go. They're in a bit of it's tough to figure out how to make a buck managing forests. And so I was down at Chittenden Brook not too long ago looking at a timber sale, and it's impressive that what the engineering is that they use to get the equipment in to do the logging that allows for the removal of biomass. It means big roads going into steep terrain that are inexpensive roads, and using Timco feller bunchers and grapple skidders and stuff. And I'm here to tell you, it's a violent relationship. I mean, it's hard on the land. And so that's what's being asked. We have to change our forestry. We just have to downsize. And the Forest Service could demo that for us. They could show us some of the earliest work done on water at the Coweta Experiment Forest in I think it's South Carolina is fabulous. I use that stuff all the time. I look at this book that was written in like 1957, and it's just fantastic. Ideas like the broad-based dip came from the Forest Service back in the late 50s. So the Forest Service has great capacity. They have great land. They have the ability to research and educate. They can be a demo forest, but I think we need to get off the biomass mode in the clear cuts. I mean, if you look at the life cycle analysis of carbon, it's not helping. It's just not. And so, and the associated roads, when you're in those kind of steep terrain and you're having these big trucks, and you think about a radius curve with a truck that's 45, 50 feet long, you need to go straight up the hill. And that's not what we want to be doing. So I think what I think would be really great to do in the Center West ecoregion is to go to the Forest Service and say, hey, we have this little watershed. I actually have one in mind that would be really fun to rethink what the forestry looks like. Not to say it's going to be wilderness. Maybe it should be wilderness. I don't know. But if we're going to have it, let's try light on the land forestry. Let's use state-of-the-art, careful forwarding practices. Let's go different than the Timco feller bunchers and the grapple skidders. I think I think it would be really informative, and I think it would be really good for us, and I think it'd be great for the Forest Service.
Okay, so Chris asks if he can respond to you in regard to your question. Chris, do you want to go ahead and unmute? We need to keep it really brief because we still have like a couple questions and we were supposed to be done 15 minutes ago. So Chris, fire away real quick.
Sure, no problem. Thank you. Hi, David. Nice to see you. I don't know if you remember me.
Of course I
visited
do.
a while ago. Oh, okay, great. I just don't know if you are aware of there's 4 giant timber sales coming to Green Mountain National Forest, about 40,000 acres of logging, and about 3/4 of it is crude, big clear cutting. And I don't think that many people in Vermont are aware of this. This is a big change from the way Green Mountain National Forest has been managed previously. And we can't just pin it all on Trump, because some of these sales were started under Obama. But I think people are going to be shocked when they see the type of logging that's coming to Green Mountain National Forest. So I just wanted to raise the issue with people. And hold on, sorry. There we go. So are you aware of those plans? And how do you think we should respond? Because there are no way are they what you're talking about as exemplary or least impact forestry. They're crude, old, big 30-acre clear cuts. One of the sales is 15,000 acres of clear cuts, basically, and the other 2 or 3 are 70% clear cutting. So I just wanted to raise the issue because I don't think people are aware of it, and I think they will be shocked. This is not what they've seen before. So,
well, I'm aware of it, not to the details that you are, but I've visited some. I visited one particular sale that was at Chittenden Brook, and it's graphic. It's a different forestry. It's a different. The equipment's getting bigger, and from a family forest situation, the equipment's getting bigger, and the woodlots are getting smaller. So I think we just have to look at private lands. We need to look at state lands. We need to look at federal lands and match the forestry with what we know. Now, not everybody's wild about Bill Muma's pro-forestation, which is a pretty remarkable story about how effective self-willed wild forests are. Well, that's a question. We have to put that out there and say, well, maybe we need more of those things. Maybe we shouldn't be logging in really steep terrain. It's tough to log. It's tough to log, period. It's really tough to log in steep terrain. And the Green Mountain National Forest, much of it is really, really steep. And so we could imagine, I guess maybe I'm an incrementalist. I don't think we should shut down logging on public lands, frankly. I think we should make it more appropriate. I think we should make it a demo kinds of logging. I think we should make it a place where we could train really highly skilled loggers to do really good work that's eco-friendly and not so homocentric, where we have true cost accounting, and where we really focus on our commons: the water, the wildlife, carbon sequestration, flood resilience, and drought resilience. Those things. Let's get out of the.
They're moving in the opposite direction.
Yeah, I'm sad and sorry to hear that. And okay. So what's the role what the role then becomes is that commoners, I think, need to wake up. I think we need to realize that commoning is the practice that was the dominant way of interacting with nature for the most of human range, all of our existence, until the Enlightenment came, which is like somebody once said, we're living in the shadow of the Enlightenment. Well, we got to get out of it. And so what that means is to rethink things. I mean, it's not just the neoliberal economics anymore. We've got to get back to like something that serves us better. The role of commoners is to take care of our commons. Our water, it's our water. So the sampling that Lewis Creek does in water quality is exemplary. That's exactly what we should be doing. But we need to do more. We should be looking at compliance with optimal conservation practices. I'm going to tell you, I don't think the acceptable management practices are up to the task. I think we need to look at those and we need to make them more effective. And or only log those pieces of land where they are effective. But so there's lots of things we can do. This is the kind of stuff I want us to do in Vermont Center West ecoregion. And I see a really strong role for commoners to step up, to monitor, to see how well we're doing, and to rely on folks like you, Chris, to you know, keep track of the acres and figure out, and where's the wood going, and how much are the roads costing, and are we combusting this stuff? Are we shipping it to Europe? What's cooking? Those are the kinds of questions that I really think we need to ask, and we don't have to do it in a negative way. It's just interesting. But I think once we see some of the facts, I think we might change our course.
Okay, thanks, David. Marty, do you want to wrap up here? Last question of the night.
Sure. Geez, David, thank you so much. This is fantastic. And I'm just so thrilled that we have the great body of people here tonight listening and chiming in. I want to try to summarize in a way that we can walk off and know what to do next. Yeah, David, what?
One thing I'm going to say is that, you know, if you found anything of use in this talk, well, you can go to our website, www.familyforest.org. Everything we do is, for better or worse, it's out there, and you're welcome to have it. And so that's one thing. But I'm really looking forward to working with Lewis Creek Association. I'm really looking forward to working with other organizations, commoners in a way. And I think we're waking up to the opportunities, and so I'm excited about that.
Cool. So I want to just share with this group, before too many more people leave, that the feedback is I'm organizing it. We'll organize it in a way that sort of describes the list of different pathways that need to occur. Like advocacy is one. We want to really work on a pilot demonstration project in the Center West ecoregion to talk to property owners about doing management practices with Vermont Family Forest Standards, that whole pathway. And so there's an education of ourselves. We want to create up, a way to do all of that. LCA won't do all of it. We're going to have to divide and conquer here. So, but LCA is going to want to focus on doing the outreach to property owners. To do that, we have to have a strategic plan. And we intend to do that with David and Mark Lappin and Bill Keaton and others that are chiming in at this point. Maybe Eric could be awesome as well. But anyway, we'll get a core team of technical support folks to put this together and get a strategy going. But I want to say to everybody how thrilled I am with what just happened with some East Charlotte Forest acreage, the Kiley property, with Claire and Gus, who are here tonight from Newton. Thank you, you guys. Good to see you. And that David has worked with Gus and Claire to create a management plan that is approved by Forest and Parks for current use. So that is what gets me really excited, is that instead of buying a conservation easement, which we cannot afford in Vermont right now, in the meantime, we're going to go about finding folks like Gus and Claire to do it all across the Center West ecoregion. And we're going to pick the polygons and the areas to hit up and go chat with those folks. That's our plan. And so we can start an e-newsletter for everybody that's on this list, and we can chit chat back and forth and keep this dialogue going. But we want to really, LCA wants to focus on one narrow part of all of this. And there's a lot of advocacy I can see is huge. And that would not, we do not have that capacity. So, if anybody else is doing that, that would be terrific. And let's compare and stay networked. We have to figure out how to, and Kate has started on our website in the library. Kate, you can maybe make a little tickler on the front page to get people to the right place. But we can also be a library for people to put stuff up on the website, like the Harvard report and David's OCP plan with Kristen Underwood, things that, and the maps that you just saw on the slideshow, even the slideshow itself. We can have this stuff all available to look at and share with folks, all that kind of stuff where we cross pollinate. Okay. So that's sort of my comments for right now. And I'm delighted that so many people got to hear you, David. So it's been wonderful.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you all very much.
Okay.
Great, thanks, David. And I just dropped a link to that page in the chat box. And if anyone here is not on our e-newsletter list, please feel free to send me your email. You can sign up through our website, and we'll get you on that list as well to keep you updated.
Yeah.
Thanks so much, David. And thanks everybody for coming tonight.